Hello and welcome to the Weather Quarter. I'm Jenny Woodward. Winter might be a quieter time of the year weather-wise, but there's still lots to talk about, so let's get right to it. Here's some weather news that made the news.
The mini tornado tore through Waroona, lifting roofs off houses and uprooting trees. Resident Gary Roshier woke up in the middle of the storm to find a gaping hole in the ceiling.
I end up hearing a little bang in the hallway. I thought, oh yeah, something's fallen off the cupboard. I better check to make sure it's nothing that's going to do any damage or something like that. And it was me actual inside of me ceiling.
Half of the roof ended up draped over the back fence, the rest in his neighbour's yard. The wind tore up power lines, causing outages in hundreds of homes. Grant Rowe was house-sitting for his friend when he was jolted awake by the sound of the storm.
It was very, very scary. The young bloke, he's 17, the owner's son. He let him come and jump in the bed with me and my wife.
Fighting fire with fire. Council, government crews and firefighters have stepped up controlled burns ahead of this year's fire season.
These guys will be burning down.
The prolonged flooding rains at the start of the year saw plenty of vegetation growth around the state. As it dries out, authorities expect it could fuel more fires than usual.
The added growth that we've had, particularly in those grasslands west of the dividing range, increase the fire danger out that way in terms of once there is an ignition of a fire, then the fire will burn quite rapidly.
And the weather conditions won't be on side. Rainfall's expected to remain at average dry levels during the coming months. Controlled burns will continue for about another month. The fire season is expected to peak around October.
When you're all alone with no place to go, a back rub's as good as it gets. It's a depressing situation for a Mallee bull wanting to strut his stuff.
He might be sitting there placid now, but he's not as placid as he is some days, and I don't think you could go and turn around and put your arm around him and give him a cuddle or anything. Anyway, so.
Bernie the bull got separated from the herd as the summer floods swept through the region. 6 months later, the bull's still high and dry, stranded on a little island in the middle of the aptly named Lake Bulloak. How's he faring?
Oh, some days he's all right, some days he isn't. He's a bit like a woman some days. He's got his own moods.
Plans to rescue the bull have so far come to naught.
I approached the Army and I approached the SOS. I haven't heard back off any of them.
It's a 1 kilometre swim to the other side of the lake, but so far Bernie hasn't made the journey. The bull does have 50 females waiting for him on the other side, and apparently he's pretty keen to be reunited.
I think if you was out here for 6 months on your own, I think you'd be pleased to see a female as well.
For now, Bernie looks set to remain lonely. The bull can't get off the island, and there's no chance the cows can spend a weekend at Bernie's.
Queensland's Flood Commission of Inquiry has delivered an interim report with the aim of protecting people should there be another great flood. It's made suggestions to local authorities to help them deal with floods and could become a blueprint for other states to follow. While meteorologists, politicians and dam experts mull over the report, people who were devastated by the floods in the so-called Summer of Sorrow are still rebuilding. With rebuilding in mind, the Queensland Show Society invited the school children from the Murphys Creek State School to perform its official opening. I spoke with the school's principal, Jo Sinclair-Jones. Jo, thanks for joining us. What was your reaction when you found out that you'd been invited to launch the Ekka this year?
Well, actually, it was a little bit of a surprise, and I have to say I was a little bit overwhelmed by it all, and thinking that, look, we're a little school in the middle of nowhere, really, and we get invited to come here. So, yeah, I was very overwhelmed.
It is an honour and a privilege to be here today to officially launch the 2011 Ekka.
We are proud to declare the 2011 Royal Queensland Show open.
And how big is the school? How many students do you have?
There are approximately 60 students at the school at the moment. Yes, we did have a few more, but from the floods we've had houses washed away. So, yeah, there's not as many there. They've had to move on to up into Toowoomba.
How did the children respond?
Well, a little bit shocked, I think, and a little bit overwhelmed. I actually kept it from them so they wouldn't get too excited and then nervous. So I just threw it on them actually yesterday. So they may still be in shock mode, but no, they're very excited, and what's happened today, it's just been overwhelming and wonderful.
Murphy's Creek was really hard hit by the floods. How are people coping there now?
Oh, look, we have our highs and lows still, but I guess we're a very close community, very tight-knit community, and everyone's very supportive of one another, and we're getting through it. Yes, it's a lovely little place that is looking at a bright future now. So.
And what was the impact of the flood on the school itself, Jo?
Look, I think it was, in terms of the buildings and all of that sort of thing, we were okay. However, the half of the school, the back half of the school was flooded where the what we call the inland tsunami went through, and it took out our junior school playground and our back oval. So that was quite devastating, and just to look at it was not a nice thing. So we had a wall fence put up so we didn't have to view all of that, but it's because it's hard to talk about this still a little bit. We had 2 staff members pass away from the school, so that was that was a huge impact on us, and yeah.
So how many staff members do you have?
Well, we have, for only a small school, we have approximately 10 to 15, yeah, so some full-time, some part-time, yeah, so.
And how long have you been there?
This will be my 4th year at the school, yes. So
you're really right into the community?
Yeah, well, I think so, yes. We do a lot in the community, and it really is like one big family, Murphy's Creek. It's everyone knows everybody there, so it's a lovely, lovely place.
Others rebuilding after the January floods include the famous Lone Pine Koala Sanctuary. It sits on the banks of the Brisbane River near the city centre. It's been a research, refuge and education centre since the 1920s for a creature that's become our national symbol. I spoke with wildlife carer Jaqui Brumm. Jaqui Brumm, thank you for joining us on the Weather Quarter. Tell me, what happened when the floods came through the sanctuary?
Well, we actually had a lot of water come in from the river and then up through the drains, and a lot of water coming down from the street above us. So we ended up with about a third of our sanctuary underwater, and a lot of animals that were in the lower lying areas had to be evacuated to higher ground. I had to move about 35 koalas up, and our tails and scales building, which is full of reptiles, there are about 25 of those animals that had to be relocated. A lot of birds went into smaller cages to make space for some of our koalas. In many ways it was easy because we didn't actually have visitors coming through the gates. A lot of people couldn't access Lone Pine. A lot of the surrounding suburb had actually been closed off, so that made it a little easier for us. And fortunately, some of the people in surrounding suburbs came to give us a hand. We had about 25 volunteers arrive with generators and shovels to help us do some cleanup. So yeah, a lot of sludge, a lot of mud, a lot of debris, all sorts of plastics and what have you out of the river came into the sanctuary. This particular enclosure that we're standing in front of now was demolished by the strength of the water, so we've just had to rebuild this. So yeah, there are a lot of different things. Our gift shop was inundated, but all of our stock had been taken to higher ground prior to the floodwaters reaching their highest levels.
How did the animals cope? Did they feel stressed, or did they not really know what was going on?
Koalas do rely on habit, so for a lot of them change can be disruptive for them, but for most of the ones that we had to move, they were animals that are used for photographs, so they're quite accustomed to being handled and moved into different areas, so they coped quite well. There are a few birds that were moved into smaller cages. I'm pretty sure they weren't happy with that for that time, but we just did what we had to do to make sure that everybody was comfortable and safe.
So in normal times, how do koalas regulate their body temperature against extreme weather?
particularly in wet weather, if it's raining, they'll curl up into a tight ball and just sit it out until it stops raining. That way they can minimise the impact of the water going through to the base of their coats. They have quite a dense coat, which enables them to have a little bit of a water repellent action, and most of the time they don't feed, they'll just sit and wait until it stops raining. Hot weather, again, they'll do the opposite. They'll actually open themselves up to give themselves maximum cooling capacity.
Did you have any problems getting enough feed for the koalas while you were doing all of the repairs?
We're lucky we have on-site plantations where we grow 17 different species of koala food trees. So we were able to go up into that plantation and just harvest as we normally would. Fortunately, there were a lot of staff that couldn't leave the site, so we had all sorts of staff available to harvest leaves, feed the other animals, take care of things.
So have you made any changes from the old setup?
Well, we did. What we've done is we've divided the enclosure into 3 portions so that it's easier to manage smaller groups of animals. These guys are very territorial, and particularly the males in breeding season become quite aggressive with one another and fight, particularly when they hear the sounds that each other makes and the scents of each other. They will actually sometimes fight, and particularly for territory and females. So by creating smaller sections in this enclosure, we've enabled the opportunity to manage these animals in smaller groups instead of one large group like it used to be.
So at least you could say that the flood had a bit of a silver lining.
There was, yes.
Thanks very much for joining us.
You're welcome.
And that's the weather quarter for this time. I'll leave you with some lovely images taken by keen photographer Richard Crompton. First up, a beautiful image of Bells Beach in Victoria. Taken late afternoon, it captured a rainbow amidst the offshore showers. While this panorama of low cloud across the valley was captured at the old Mount Dandenong Observatory. Thanks, Richard. And I'd love to see your photos too. You can send them to me at weatherquarter@your.abc.net.au. I'm Jenny Woodward. Bye for now.